and I wanted to talk about bits and bobs and funds and grants. And we got to talk about this Fearless Fund again. They are trying to take away grants exclusively for Black women because I told you, I called it. I called it. I said, didn't I say it, that people are going to get tired of this diversity, equity, and inclusion? And they're going to say, we're tired of it. When white people don't care about being called racist anymore, it's going to affect Black women. And I was right. So here we are with the Fearless Fund. And I wanted to talk about that and, you know, how we can support her. And because this is really rough, because this is one of the loans, the grants that I was talking about for Black women, and they're trying to take that away. So again, if they start with the Fearless Fund, what other funds are they going to take away from Black women? Hey, Tobias, you know, I know you heard of, I don't know if you know, but there's a fund called the Fearless Fund that I was talking about last year, and that they were giving grants to Black women in business, right? Now there's a gentleman named Mr. Bloom, hello, Veronica, that is trying to take away the Fearless Fund for Black women. I told you, when white folks get tired of being called racist, it's all, the fangs are out, the claws are out. So, what can we do to support this woman? Because if they start with the Fearless Fund, what else are they going to try to take away from Black women? You understand? Hey, with style. Hey, Natty. You understand? I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but we have to really be mindful of how we're going to move in the next couple of years or so. And this is an election year, and they're trying to take away things that were specifically geared toward Black women. But I don't see them going after the Hispanicals. I don't see them going after the Chinese. I don't see them going after Filipinos. So they're targeting Black women. And I've said this time and time again, people are gonna get tired. And now this is coming to play. This is something very important that I think Black women really need to pay close attention to, because it will have an effect on you later on down the line. Hi, Ree. I called it though. I'm not saying that I'm some, hi, Shalonda. I'm not saying that I'm some kind of oracle or anything, but I see these things, and this is what's coming to play. And I'm worried. I'm worried. So actually, I'm going to have, I'm getting checking in with the lady who runs Fearless Fund, Ariana, to see if she, Ayana, if she can come in and have a conversation with us about this, because this is precedent. Because if they start with that, what else are they going to start with? Hey, Mariette, hey, Cheryl, what else are they going to start with? How, hi, Barbie, are they going to, how far is this going to go? Has anybody been reading up on the Fearless Fund?
I mean, I read a couple of articles, but I'm not like well versed on it. But I read certainly read a couple of articles on it.
Hmm.
Well, it's interesting because one of the articles I read, and maybe I hope I wasn't misinterpreting it, but there are two women, one who actually started the fund and one who came in based on a recommendation from her husband, and she was doing, I think, like the marketing aspect of it, if I read
Mhm.
correctly. And then, and correct me if I'm wrong, Almaz, but I think the young lady who was doing marketing has stepped back a little bit um, once all of this controversy started, and the young lady who actually started it is still, hanging in there. At least that's what I got from the article. So again, I could be a little, I may have miss, maybe I was reading between the lines or whatever, but that's what I got from it. So I'm not sure what exactly is the status of the two women still involved.
Okay, well,
So,
this is what I've got recently, so I'll just read it out if you don't mind. It says grant program for Black women comes under tough questioning in key anti DEI lawsuit. I called it Miami. A small venture capital firm faced tough questions from conservative judges Wednesday as it defended a grant program for Black women owned businesses in a lawsuit that has become emblematic of the growing legal backlash against corporate diversity programs. God damn it, I called it. The Fearless Fund, which provides early stage funding for businesses owned by women of color, is asking a three-judge panel in the U.S. Federal Court of Appeals to lift the injunction against one of its programs, the Strivers Grant Contest, which provides $20,000. Remember, I was telling women to apply for that to businesses that are majority owned by Black women. The conservative American Alliance for Equal Rights filed a lawsuit arguing that the program discriminates against people of other races. The hearing in Miami on Wednesday is intended to decide whether the grant will remain suspended for the duration of the lawsuit. Questions by conservative leaning panel consisting of two judges appointed by former President Donald Trump and one appointed by President Barack Obama suggests that the Fearless Fund will have an uphill battle. Judge Kevin Newsom, a Trump appointee, pushed back against the Fearless Fund argument that the grants are protected by the First Amendment because they are charitable donations. He asked the Fearless Fund attorneys whether the same protection would apply to a contest open to only to white applicants. That's a question frequently raised by Edward Bloom, the conservative activist who leads the American Alliance for Equal Rights and who was behind the Supreme Court case that ended affirmative action in college admissions. I think it's a pretty simple yes or no, Newsom said, interrupting when the attorney for the Fearless Fund, Jason Schwartz, started to reply. Schwartz replied that a white only contest set up under the same perimeters would indeed be protected by the First Amendment, no matter how repugnant I might find that First Amendment protects all speech. Pressed to explain how this case differs from a business that excludes minorities, Swartz argued that charitable donations are intended to promote a cause different from commercial transactions such as employment and housing. The American Alliance argued that the Fearless Fund contest is not a charitable donation, but a contract whose racial requirements violates Section 1981 of the 1866 Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discriminations on the basis of race when enforcing contracts. It was originally intended to protect formerly enslaved people from economic exclusion. I don't see how that worked. The Fearless Fund case has become a rallying point for the civil rights activists who argued that a ruling dismantling the program would endanger other donations or programs designed to help disadvantaged groups. The Fearless Fund was founded to address the huge racial disparity in funding for businesses owned by women of color. Less than 1% of venture capital funding, for example, goes to businesses owned by Black and Hispanic women, according to the nonprofit advocacy group Digital Digital Undivided. Less than 1% of venture capital funds go to women of color. So we are here fighting them to say, can we at least have 1%? They're saying, no, we want all of the pie. Ben Crump, a civil rights attorney who is also representing Fearless Fund, why did they get Ben Crump? I don't know. Said the news conference following the hearing. That's why this case is so consequential and so landmark because it will have a chilling effect not only on women and women of color, but even diversity in America. The Fearless Fund was founded with backing from prominent companies like JP Morgan Chase and Company, Bank of America, and MasterCard, which funds the Strivers Grant Contest. But since the lawsuit was filed, the Fearless Fund had trouble securing new investments, said the co founder Ariana Simone. When people hear lawsuits, sometimes the spirit of fear has gotten to them. So we have been financially impacted due to the lawsuit. We're looking for upwards of eight figures of investments that fell through this past fall. Simone at the news conference. In court, Newsom expressed skepticism at the Fearless Fund arguments that it grants are not only discriminatory, given it's a tiny player in the venture funding industry, and business owners who are not eligible may have other avenues of accessing capital. The thing about it, I just don't think I either fully buy or understand that it seems like at its core, the premise of your argument, so long as there are lots of other sources of funding out there not discriminating on the basis of race. We can, Newsom said. Schwartz argued that charities have the right to choose what the fund is based on the problem they're trying to address. In the context of small giving, you cannot say it's not remedial just because it's not solving everyone's problems, Schwartz said. The answer can't possibly be to give everyone or no one. A different panel of the same court appeals temporarily halted the strivers contest last fall, reversing a lower court's decision that refused to block it. The end.
So can I throw out something, because what I don't hear the fearless fun attorneys doing, the whole purpose of that fund was to um, have an avenue for women who were looking for investments for their business. And the reason they started it, from what I've read, is because there's such a, you know,
Charity.
scarcity of funding from venture capitalists or angel fund investors. So here's what I think they should do: is it's all about data. So I don't know how, and let me preface this by saying I don't know how readily available this information is, but all they have to, it would seem all they would have to do is get at least 10, 20 venture capitalist funds or angel investor funds, see who has applied, and see what the numbers are. How many of them have given to minorities or women of color, and so on and so forth. And then to me, that would at least help prove their case. They are in existence because there's a need in a market where people can't get funding. So that's how all businesses are created. So I don't know, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but that's what I would be doing.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, these funds were set up because of the scarcity they have about funding black women and women of color. So if there was funding for qualified applicants, because remember they have to be qualified. So I look, I myself have had to send in my white Jewish allies to go handle shit for me in life. You got to do this. So hey, Pink Pill. So I need to speak with you tomorrow if I can. I need to talk to you about something. So if the if there isn't um there what I think they're not doing is showing that they are feeling a need because people, women of color who are qualified, because remember you got to be qualified to get these angel investors, and it's rigorous. So if they are qualified and they still got denied at other places, hey Vanessa, hey Joy, if they got denied at other places, wouldn't that the Fearless Fund and other funds that are geared toward women of color, specifically black women, fulfill a need? Because remember, all these aid societies like they did back in the day with the Chinese, the Japanese, because they weren't able to get funding from regular banks. So that's why they set up their own institutions. There's at least three Chinese banks, there's at least five Korean banks where they go and help people in their community. So are they going to go after them, or are they just dealing with the weakest link because black women are black women? But I called this out, KFC called this out, we called this out years ago that this shit was only going to last a little while and there was going to be a backlash. And I called it. Hey Seaweed.
So, so are they going to dismantle the Navy Federal Credit Union? Because that's not open to everyone. You
No.
have to be, I'm just using this as an example. You have to be in the military to open an account, or if not in the military, a family member of military personnel. But every Joe Blow can uh, go in and open an account at Navy Federal Credit Union. So should we be dismantling that? Because I certainly can't go. I mean, I can, but you know, you get my point. It's like if they're going to be nitpicking that way, then let's do it across the board.
That's what I was saying. And Renee Martin said something very profound. She goes, the data is out there because the GPs have kept track of funding they get from LPs, investors, and investors. Hmm. Coming up, Renee. Come on up, baby. Hey, coffee. So this is something that we really need. Thank you. We really need to pay close attention to because this could have an effect on you in the long run. Go ahead, Renee. What you said was brilliant.
Hi, Maz. Yeah, so I I do have knowledge about this space because I'm, doing that program to learn about venture capital and private equity. And I follow the Fearless Fund. I follow a lot of funds that support women in general. And I didn't realize they had this lawsuit going on. But yeah, for as far as who invests in funds, they have to keep track of that. GPs, this is the lady who created it. She's considered a general partner, and they get funding from various investors. And most of them need to be accredited investors. It could be institutional investors, but the data is out there. They have to keep because once they get investment from their LPs, they also have to let the investors know what's going on with their investments. Keep track of it. All of it's monitored. There's SEC regulations and guidelines when they get funding. It's highly regulated space, so everything's going to be tracked. There's a paper trail for all of this stuff when a GP creates a fund and requests, funding from their various investors. So, yeah.
So, does that mean that anyone who applies for funding from a venture capitalist or an angel investor, they have records of who they are, you know, all the way down to, I mean, if we're talking, if you're a black woman applying for funding, they would have all that information because to me, you're not winning this on the constitutionality of the issue because unfortunately, Bloom has a point, and that's why this is going to have traction. What they're going to have to do, it to me, is beat them on the numbers because the numbers don't lie, as they always say. And so, if she, if they go by the numbers and look at applicants from all the different venture capitalists and see who has applied, who has been rejected, and see the disparity in the equity the on the the equity of not being able to receive funding, then I think that's how they win. To me, that's just my opinion.
See, I have an issue with this because yeah, they do keep track of the applicants who, request funding. It's all tracked, especially if they have to write a check. It's one thing if a business submits a pitch deck for review, that's not going to be tracked. What they do track is when the applicant does receive funding and what check size that they're writing. That the VC does have to make a note of that, and if because there is it's important to know because whatever business growth that's generated from writing those checks, most VCs there's a management fee that they get, and there's also a 20% carry fee based on the investments that they make. So it's a money generating business for them to write a check for a business to invest in it. I have an issue with the whole this reverse discrimination thing because I've sat in numerous webinars with white women run VC funds requesting fund money from other women. I've sat in a South Asian woman, I think she's from India, VC fund only invests in other women and not just, certain minority women, but just women in general. So I don't understand the issue. And I got to look into who the hell Edward Bloom is and what his issue is. So I'm on YouTube right now, just kind of researching because I get the newsletter from Fearless Fund. I follow a variety of just funds that support women in general. So I'm new to what the current issue is for this particular fund because there's so many funds out there, women operated funds and they support women funded or women founded businesses. So I don't fully understand the scope of it, but Just probably some
The
civil
issue
rights
he's trying
thing.
to make is the issue he's trying to make, from what I'm understanding, is because it's black women only. If I'm not correct, Ahmed, this is a black women only fund to help black women because we have the least accessibility to the money. So I think that's his issue. Now the other ones that you're talking about are probably open. I don't know if they're open to all women. I mean, I have no idea, but his issue is that this
So
is a black women
does
only.
he need to go after Goldman Sachs too? Because I thought they created a whole fund just to support black women. But I don't think he's gonna go after such a giant called Goldman Sachs because they did pretty much the same thing. That's I don't understand it. So I don't know.
Well, from what I read, these young ladies received money from Goldman Sachs, and apparently, one, I think like their last installment or whatever, they're not. At least if I read the article correctly, they're not fulfilling that yet. So they're holding off based on this lawsuit. So yeah, Goldman Sachs was giving them money, and Goldman Sachs, as we know, have had this huge program for black women, but I don't know. They're not going after Goldman.
Of course
I,
not. They would never go after Goldman because they don't have enough, the pockets are not deep enough to go after such a giant in the investment banking and investor space. So
Um, can I ask if we could refresh the room? I kind of think I know what we're talking about, but yeah. And hi,
what do you
Almaz,
think?
and hi everybody on stage. Hi.
Hi. We're talking about the Fearless Fund. It is a fund that was started by a lady named Ariana Simone, and it was a fund to help get capital for Black women. And the thing is, the anti diversity, equity, and inclusion people are filing a lawsuit saying that it is discriminatory. How can you be about diversity, equity, and inclusion when you only have this fund geared toward Black women? So he's trying to dismantle the Fearless Fund. So I'm saying, and I posted the article up at the top. So if he does this, I'm Renee, I get what you guys are saying, but remember, a lot of those conservatives have very deep pockets too. Remember the last room I opened up last week where one of the young ladies was saying about all the people that donate to this alliance that Bloom is affiliated with? Conservatives have deep pockets too.
Um, are we talking about this too from a larger vantage point? Because I have a feeling that the glory days of DEI are quickly going in the rearview mirror.
I said
I,
I called that out last year. I said, but I even told my nieces who got these like really choice, DEI positions. I mean, and I was saying last year, I said, well, how many times do you need to have a meeting about you need to hire more Negroes? How many times?
right. Like how many
I
times?
mean, how many?
Yeah, and you got to start
How
making
many?
things up like um being to work on time is racist. Like you have to and it's like an exhaustion. So I was thinking about like this there's like the Overton window. If you guys are aware of the Overton window, it's like what society deems as like how far society will go in a direction that's progressive before they start to retract and the
Right,
Overton window starts to close. And I feel like, especially with the Claudine Gay situation, that was kind of the impetus for people to just be like, okay, we're jumping on this. We've had enough. And um, then there's also been some scandals around Black women in DEI that
yep,
are obviously being, they're being put forth in the media for a reason. Remember that woman from Facebook who I think she was in charge of DEI, and she was like embezzling funds and et cetera, like that. And then you see all of these Black attorneys who are getting caught up in scandal. Like, this is not an accident, you guys. Like, there's a reason why they're putting forth all of this. And surprise, surprise, it's almost exclusively Black women.
Well, I
Yeah.
gave my premise of what this was last week when Ahmez opened the room, because I said if you do a bird's eye view, this comes down to we're in an election year. Black women was absolutely responsible for getting Joe Biden in office last year, if you want to look at it that way. And I think what they're trying to do is dismantle our power unit. Um, when you clip someone at the knees with money, you're pretty much handicapping them in all types of ways. But I think a lot of the focus on Black women is because, as we saw during George Floyd and all of that craziness with the marches, and then all of a sudden people were hiring Black women to do this, that, and the other. And again, like I said, they pretty much said that we are the ones who put him over the top for presidency, and then now Trump is running again, and these conservatives went back in office. Whether you're, liberal, conservative, whatever the case may be, it's going to be messy, it's going to be bloody, and I think they're trying to uh, just eliminate us out of the game. And I honestly think that's what this is all about. Because
And
I,
I
I don't
agree.
believe in coincidences. This is an election year, and all of a sudden now, this is a problem. All of a sudden.
Hmm. So, how is this going to affect Black women in the long run? And this is why I have people like Tobias in the room and all these other people, talking about getting your credit together, getting your life in order, because this is going to have an effect. Again, I don't think they're going to go after the Chinese. I don't think they're going to go after the Hispanics. I don't think they're going to go after a lot of people. But Black women are the weakest link, because historically we don't have protections in place, because we don't have those protections in place, because some dudes are just on some other bullshit, but we're not going to go there. So, because I don't want to be out here bashing, people, you know, I'm not going to start off on that tangent, but, we don't have the protections in place. So we are out here willy nilly on our own. So if this happens, what other programs that are going to happen that are going to have an effect on Black women? These are the things that I think about. And you're right, it is an election year. And it's like, why now? Because there is no such thing as coincidences, especially in an election year.
Well, I think that, the departments that will be eliminated will be those DEI departments, or they'll be greatly reduced. I know that there's been a significant number of Black women who have been filling those positions, um, and they're going to have to look for other work. Like, I personally think that the DEI category is going to shrink so small. um, it's going to be an experiment. If you think about, like, historically, whenever there was kind of an overreach because people tried to do something corrective, there was always a backlash.
Hmm.
So, you think about, like, after the Civil War, um, they did Reformation, where they put people, and this is important, people who weren't necessarily slaves, who weren't freed slaves, that weren't necessarily qualified in places, in things like being part of the judicial system, like putting, being them in part, having them be part of civic duties and things like that. And they weren't prepared, they weren't qualified, and they weren't educated. And they did it actually as, to as revenge to the South, but it also set us back. That was the entry of the Ku Klux Klan. Then we had the civil rights movement. And what happened with the civil rights movement, there was this push first to overcorrect. Then we got the war on poverty. And what did the war on poverty do to Black families?
Not a damn
Um,
thing.
Actually, it made it worse because of the way that they framed it. So here we have like a situation where yes, there were poor Black mothers and that needed support, and the men were underemployed, but the way that it was set up. Do you guys remember Claudine, where you have to hide the man, you got to hide your stuff, you got to, like that was a real thing, and
Yeah, and
so
that was only for
yeah,
a brief moment in time because it was black women who were saying, nope, nope, we're not doing this.
yeah. And so what happened was that a lot of women, and then also the more children you had, the more income you got. I mean, there were women who actually were like, I need a raise, I'm gonna have another baby. And what was predictable was the government was the provider and the government always provided, but the Black men did not always provide. It was sketchy, their provision was patchy. And so now we have this. And so there's always this, there's this move to overcorrect, to try to repair something. Then there's this overreach, and then there's this major backlash. So I'm worried too about what that's going to be this time around.
It like I said, when my nieces were getting these cushy ass diversity, equity, and inclusion jobs, these really nice positions, making six figures, and I was like, baby, listen to TT, save all your money, move back in with your parents if you have to, but save your money because this is only a fleeting thing. And when it ends, just make sure that you've got your money. So they listen. I'm like, don't start planning out 3 years ahead. Move if it's a remote job where you only have to go to your meeting once a month, move back home to mom and dad. Save all of your paychecks because when this shit is over, it's going to be over. And a couple of them got laid off, and at least they listened to their auntie. They moved back home. They clocked all their paychecks. They didn't spend a dime of their money. Their parents were like, nope, save all your money as possible. And they stayed in those positions for like 2 years. They saved their six-figure income, and they got called into the office and they don't have a job anymore. But I mean, they've gotten other jobs since then. But luckily, I told them don't go out buying Louis and Birkins and all this other shit. Clock your paper, stack your paper, and keep it moving because that is only going to be a cushy job for a certain amount of time. And when that era is past, it's not going to happen again. And I was right. I was right. I hate to be right on these things, but I am.
They're passing a law in Florida that it's illegal or it's considered defamation to accuse any
Well, I have to
institution or
say you
anybody of
did call it on
racism.
mess because I remember sitting on stage when you were talking about it. So
Mhm. Are you